YouTube hadn't started, although it sounded like it had. Can we start again with you, Nancy? I'm so sorry.
Okay.
It doesn't, am I on here yet?
Yeah.
Am I back on? Yeah, I'm afraid our YouTube page still says, oh,
YouTube hadn't started.
Okay. You are on. You are rolling.
Okay, so we're gonna restart, and I just need to clear this out in a second.
Yeah, I'm afraid our YouTube.
All right. That's crazy. Why did it do that? All right, welcome everyone. Here we are again. We're going to do a little late start, a restart for some of us over here on Zoom. And welcome to everyone who's watching. Welcome to all of our composers. We're going to hear from each one of them kind of in a random order to keep you all guessing. And I just want to remind you, if you're watching us on YouTube, please click on subscribe. It's totally free to subscribe, and it really helps CNCM. And we're going to be building more and more content there that's always going to be of interest. And also let us know in the chat where you're watching us from. Okay, so let's start again with your beautiful answer. If you track that. This is Nancy Telfer, although her name on the screen may look like her name is iPad. That's simply because she's a little bit incognito. No, just kidding. Anyway, Nancy, what I wanted to just have you just go over again, because your answer was so beautiful, even though nobody heard it. How, in the process of your composing, do you balance inspiration, and I wonder if that's the right word, but with the needs of your audience, the students who may be playing, or the pedagogues who are teaching the music, or the listeners? How in the process is that balance for you?
Okay, first I'm going to say that I think inspiration is a good idea. Okay, yeah. I'm just going to say one of the reasons I think that is because everybody can learn how to listen to the music inside themselves, but it's not always great music that you hear inside yourself. And so if you want to share your music as a composer, you pick and choose what you hear inside yourself that you would actually pass on to somebody else. So basically, I think of composing music as a kind of communication. Starts with the composer, okay, who hopefully is inspired and has something worthwhile to communicate, and that goes to the performer next. So a very important part in this activity, and finally to the audience. And none of this works unless all three parts of it work separately. Yeah. So when I'm actually writing music, in other words, putting it down on the page from what I hear inside myself, at times I'm imagining that I'm the performer and what it feels like to be performing. So if I'm talking about piano, I'll be actually playing it on the piano. If I'm writing music for orchestra and I'm looking at the individual parts, then I'll be feeling as if I'm playing that instrument. And then I can feel my own reaction to it. And it keeps me on course that I write things that are playable, and also not going to, in the case of pianists, not going to use to create damage to the hands. Recently, I've seen a few compositions from composers that definitely are going to cause injuries. Yeah, so those kind of things. Now, where does it feel right? And then sometimes I'm imagining that I'm in the audience, and how does it strike me? If I'm trying to get the music created so that the audience will feel surrounded by the music, do I feel surrounded when I'm playing this music myself and imagining I'm part of the audience? And how long should I go in this section before I tune out? In other words, for each section in music, whether it's a phrase or whether it's a 2-minute section of it, you need to know exactly where it should end. So I have these judges from that help me out in my mind as I'm writing music.
That's such a fascinating way of describing it.
There are many different kinds of music writing. So if you have a purpose, like what you're trying to get to for the performers and the audience, then you can make changes if you need to. But anyway, get it to work in the long run. The ultimate goal I have when I'm writing music as a composer is, I think of this, if I were a performer, what would be my ultimate goal? My ultimate goal there would be that someone in the audience afterwards would say to me, I felt like you were performing just for me. To me, that's the ultimate thing. So as a composer, my goal is that someone will be feeling as they listen to my music, wherever it is, whether I'm there or not, but they will be feeling as if I wrote this piece just for them.
Wow. Yeah. Like a mystical experience, heightened experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Beautiful. Is there any particular example that kind of comes up as a heightened moment of that process for you that you can describe, or is that just kind of you just enter in and that's what happens?
I try to do that with all my music, but they're not all heightened experiences. I had a work premiere yesterday in the snowstorm, and it was comedy. So yeah. So there obviously is, if it gets people laughing and then that's not what I would call a heightened experience. Like that's a different kind of experience altogether. Yeah. So trying to communicate. First of all, you have an idea, and you want to communicate in a way appropriate for that. And that's why one might be a comedy, one might be just take your breath away. Mm-hmm. And one might help a person experience emotions they haven't felt before, like the depth of tears or whatever. We change as we go through life. And there's so many possibilities just in the emotion category alone that a composer could just do that all the time. There's so many possibilities how you could send a message in that category, but there are many other categories as well. Yeah.
We're going to have a longer interview sometime to really delve. This is such a great start to our chat here today, Nancy. I so appreciate it. And you mentioned that you had a premiere yesterday, and I just would ask you can you tell us what's on the docket now? What are you working on?
Sure. This is interesting because I'm getting older and older, like everybody gets older, right? And right now I've been writing pieces for vocal duets plus piano. Okay. And particularly soprano and bass together, which is kind of like tuba and flute together. So if you haven't done it already, you'll understand it. And it's one of the most challenging forms. Yeah. I would say compared to, it's much more difficult than writing for full orchestra. I've done a number of things for orchestras across the country, and that I did experimental things in, and it wasn't as difficult as this. But the composers that are involved today, if you have written piano duets, the same problems exist as in a vocal duet. In other words, for a piano duet, sure, you can have the top part always have the melody and the bottom part accompany, but that doesn't make a great piece of music. Yeah. And all the other possibilities are really tricky to get them to work acoustically and technically, but it's very satisfying to be able to do that. But to me, this is a challenge, and it's nice to have a good challenge at my age. And I'm suddenly learning all kinds of new things simply by changing the instrumentation.
Fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
We look
So
forward to
that's
that.
what I'm up to right now.
All right. Wow. And let's, just because we have to keep track of the clock, let's move to the next composer. How about Nicholas? Are you interested in telling us further to that same topic, perhaps the balance in your process between inspiration and thinking of the needs of who you're writing it for?
Sure. Um, a lot of the pieces that I wrote that have been published in the CNCM collections were written at a time when I was writing for some of my students. And so it was the individual students who kind of inspired me. Sometimes they were looking for a new piece to sing in a festival or to play in a Canada Music Week concert. And they would ask me, you know, you're a composer, maybe you could write something for me, or you know, so I was able to, the inspiration really came from the challenge of trying to write something tailor-made to that individual student. So I knew their strengths and weaknesses, I knew their technical abilities, and so if it was a song, I would ask them to choose some poetry that they liked or some other text, you know. And in that way, I discovered all kinds of new poets that I hadn't heard of. For example, oh dear, the name escapes me now. That's what happens when you get older. It'll come to me later when I'm not trying to think
Yeah,
of her name. But I ended up writing a lot of songs based on this person's poetry, just because my student had given me the first poem.
so that means that the
So-
student's almost involved in the process.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And so once I'd been given that challenge, then usually what I would do for a piano piece, for example, would be to sit down at the piano and just improvise and try out some different ideas, and play around with different styles, even you know, some more jazzy styles, or a folk kind of idiom, or something a little more sort of neo-baroque or neoclassical, again depending on what the student likes to play. And I find, for example, that a lot of my younger kids, their favorite piece in the repertoire that they may be preparing at any particular time is the classical work, you know, the sonatina, the sonata. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why that should be. Something to do with just the that sort of 18th century idiom, I guess.
How the technical demands of it, once they're sort of mastered, at least that makes it fun, right?
Yeah,
That you can do
yeah.
that.
So one of the pieces that I thought I could talk about, maybe to help answer that question, would be a piece that I wrote back in 2007 called Spider Dance, and it's in the CNCM collection level 7 repertoire for piano. And this piece came about because at the time I wrote it, I'd been preparing a program for a concert with a singer based on the Italian tarantella. And as you probably know, the tarantella is an Italian folk dance named for the tarantula,
Right.
or wolf spider. And a tarantella is usually in 6/8 time and quite fast. And so we'd been preparing some songs, and also I was preparing a couple of piano solos. The more familiar tarantellas, there's one by Chopin, there's one by the Polish-American composer Pietrzonka. And so then I decided to play around with some ideas of my own, and I came up with the spider dance, which apparently you folks liked and decided to include in your collection.
Nice. Excellent. And what are you currently working on, Nicholas?
I was approached by a writer, a Hungarian writer by the name of Shoshana Ardo, who approached me after finding some examples of my work on the internet. And it turned out that she and I had been on the same residency program in the Norwegian Arctic a few years ago, a program called the Arctic Circle Expedition, where they get artists from various different disciplines, and we all get together and spend 2 weeks on a large three-masted or sailing ship, square rigged ship that's set up with living accommodations and space to be creative, and we were sailing around Svalbard up in the Arctic, just north of the Arctic Circle. And so she sent me some poetry and said, would you be interested in collaborating? And so I'm working on some of these poems for women's choir.
Okay.
And I haven't actually done much of the writing yet because I'm kind of focusing on my conducting career right now, and it's coming up to Christmas concert season.
Right.
So I've got 3 choirs, including Messiah performances and so on too.
Sounds like you might need the depths of winter and that cold of January to bring you back to the Arctic inspiration.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. We're going to continue to move to another composer to just have a chat on a similar angle, and that would be Judith. I think you have some ideas also about the inspiration versus well, not versus, but how is that balanced for you, the inspiration and keeping in mind the practicality, who you're writing for? Judith Snowden. Oh,
sorry about the telephone call. I actually thought that I had pressed mute, but my mouse was like a minuscule,
I think that was
millimeter away from the mute button, and I hadn't actually pressed it.
I think that was before the YouTube kicked in anyway, so.
That's good. I wanted to talk about, I think more than anything, my writing specifically for students. And usually I write best if I have an actual goal, an actual project to work on. And I've always found that writing for students that you have to really helps them to learn. So for example, I play the flute as well as the piano, and I often write flute parts and I play them along with them so that they're in a duet. Very often I will write or find a duet and add a flute part so the kids are learning to play in ensembles, because music comes alive when you do it in a group. So that's the kind of thing that I wanted to talk about today, that with what you have, then I arrange and work with what I have. I've done the same thing with choirs, with church choirs, with all kinds of things. I write for what the need is, and I find that to be really rewarding, because you can actually help people make music if you're writing for what they need. And I have a few little examples if you'd like to hear. I wrote this little duet. What's this one here? Just a minute. I have a couple. I sequence everything that I write so that I can listen to it. If I'm doing a choir piece, I want to hear exactly how it sounds and exactly what the effect is. So this is a wade in the water, and you'll hear that one part is just doing the octave melody and someone is just doing chords at the bottom, and the flute part has this little jazzy piece. And so when they play it together, the kids just love it. So I'll just play a bit of this. I'm hoping you'll be able to hear it.
Yeah, it'll be through the speakers. But
yeah.
Oh.
Can you hear it all? You all hear it. there anyway. That's an example of, there we are. That's an example of the kind of thing that I do. And I had some kids play that, a couple of groups of kids play that. The Listen to the Rain, which is in this 7B, which a lot of kids have said they have liked, and I've had a lot of my kids play it. I wrote that. One of the things I've wanted to do, it's kind of my dream, is that to write music for a whole bunch of kids on keyboards to play together. And they take your keyboard and you can give it a sound, whatever you like, and then they can play in a group. And it's like they're an orchestra. And I've done this a few times with kids. I love doing it. And I think they love playing in it because, first of all, again, they're learning to play in a group. I usually create a drum track for them. And so they have to play with a metronome. And yet they're making music with others. And often the part that they're playing isn't all that hard.
Right.
So let me see, I've got one here. Hang on. This is Listen to the Rain. And it starts out with like a rain stick sound, you know, and then there's this kind of, I think some kind of drum rhythm that I created. And then the parts, I broke the piano parts down into different groups. So somebody played, I think it's a marimba sound on the keyboard, and someone else played a flute sound, and someone else played a clarinet sound. And we would do this, perform this stuff for the parents. And because this is the thing about people that have compositional skills, they can do this for their students. They can arrange things and make it really creative and make it fun. So I'll play a little spot of Listen to the Rain. I don't know how many of you know this piece, but it's in the, like I said, it's in the grade 7.
Okay, we just have a very short minute left, so.
Okay, all right, here we go. So someone played a pad on the strings, and someone playing a little, and then someone else is playing the flute part.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so that's what I love to do with my students.
Yeah, that's that. And so the inspiration is coming. Oh, I'm coming through your speaker now. Anyway, the inspiration is there with the students as well as the way you've set it up. Beautiful. Is there anything that you're specifically doing currently that you want to tell us about?
A couple of years ago, I did a piece for our local choir called Voice of the Earth. And it was about the environment. And it was like the earth speaking to us saying, look what you're doing to me. And so that was really successful. And so my next project, which I'm working on, is called A Thing of Beauty. And it's taking all these little ideas about beautiful things and putting them all together into a choral work. So that's what I'm working on, but it's coming slowly. And during COVID, of course, we couldn't have choirs.
So this will be amazing. I am just so excited about having these chats with each of you. And I realize that an hour is ridiculous. But anyway, I'm sorry we have to just chop it up into small segments because I think we should have like an hour on each. Anyway, that'll be in the future. I need to move on to somebody else now. Thank you so much, Judith and Nancy and Nicholas so far. How about we hear from my colleague in executive co-directorness, Wes?
Hi, Sandra.
I would love to just talk to you briefly about when I was examining. I just have begun to be a CNCM examiner a few months ago, and I noticed there was a piece that was, well, you were played quite regularly, and there was one piece at least that was played several times. So do you want to tell us from your point of view, do you feel like you have a top hit amongst the CNCM?
Yes, which is a matter of some surprise to me, because often when I write music, I'm often writing for someone like myself. And it's very easy to remember what it was to be 12 and 13 and being a boy taking piano lessons. So I'll write for him. If I can write a piece of music that a 12-year-old boy can play for his peers in his grade 7 class, and the boys will say, "That was cool, play it again." It does so much for that young piano player's ego and esteem, and for their willingness to put in the hours that they have to do. So I do like to create pieces that groove and sound cool. And so I wrote a whole collection of stuff that had cool names like B flat minor groove and a whole whack of A. And I did some drum recordings that kids could play along with, and I thought these were great. And at the end of the collection, I put a little piece called Watching the World Go By Through the Car Window. And it was all about being a kid and sitting in the back seat while mom and dad were driving to church and just watching the world go by, and it's kind of timeless and it's dreamy. It's got a nice groove, but I didn't think it kicked like the other pieces. And that one has by far been the most successful. So it's true, I don't think we have the foggiest clue which of our pieces will resonate with audiences. Sometimes you get it right and sometimes you get it completely wrong.
So crazy that you mentioned that piece. That's actually the one that I heard the most. And we didn't even discuss that this is the one you're going to discuss. That's it's a beautiful piece. And that idea of just being a kid in a car driving through the prairies, that's a powerful idea.
Yeah, the scenery doesn't change a whole lot. No, it's a little mesmerizing.
Speaking of the scenery of the prairies.
Yes. Sandra is going to allow me to introduce and let everybody know that this summer CNCM is thrilled and over the moon to be hosting a live in-person event called, well, we've done it before, called Summer Sizzle. That's going to be in Bigger, Saskatchewan. In Bigger, Saskatchewan. You do not want to miss this. It'll be 2 days of a great deal of fun, of education and introducing published new music for music teachers, and 2 days of great music making for young piano students. So what are the dates? 12th and 13th? Is that right?
I thought it was 11th and 12th.
Okay, 11th and 12th. I knew I should have looked it up before I said anything. And so you are all very welcome to come to Saskatchewan and to Bigger and to join us for a very fun and enlightening couple of days.
Now I need to ask you, do you see my screen? Because this is again a thing that...
Well, I'm looking at my phone right now and I see my face on it.
Okay.
So
I need to just do this again. Why is it not working?
I see your screen.
So you see what I am about to share? There it is. Thank you. Okay. Here we have a little invitation to you all. Hopefully this will work. Please tell me if it isn't.
It's good.
Everything you didn't know you wanted to know about Saskatchewan in July. We at CNCM are hosting our successful Summer Sizzle event in Bigger, Saskatchewan on July 11th and 12th, 2023. We are excited about returning to not only holding Summer Sizzle as a live event, but also returning to the wonderful town of Bigger has us all quite jazzed. To begin with, Bigger is known as one of the friendliest towns in Saskatchewan, and you can quote me on that. So we know we will all be well cared for during our stay. Saskatchewan has a thriving hospitality and tourism industry, which is no surprise, as Saskatchewanians, yes, that is a word, are known as some of the most hospitable people around. So where is this fabulous place, you ask? Bigger is a 95-kilometer drive west of Saskatoon. No traffic on the way, well, other than the odd deer, moose, or antelope. It's a 6-hour drive to Calgary and Banff, an 8-hour drive in the other direction to Winnipeg, and 3 hours from Mozart. You may not have thought of Saskatchewan as your summer vacation destination, so let me just tell you a bit about what this great province has to offer. You'll want to spend some time in Saskatoon, as this city has a number of interesting things to offer in the summer. You'll love the weather. Average temperatures in July are around 20 degrees, and plenty of days are much warmer than that. Saskatoon is well set up with plenty of good restaurants and shops, cool architecture, an amazing modern art museum, Kinsman Park with nutrient playground, Saskatoon Forestry Farm Park and Zoo, Nutrient Wonder Hub, Shakespeare on the Saskatchewan, the Jazz Festival, the Western Development Museum, river cruises, Wanuskewin Heritage Park, and so much more. And then there's Biggar itself. This town of just over 2,000 was originally a railway town and now continues to be a prosperous place with its economy linked to agriculture. If you have been to CNCM's Summer Sizzle in Biggar in the past, you'll know what an incredible community it is. They'll be pulling out all the stops for us, so we really hope you can join us there for all the fun. See you in July.
All right. Now, I hope you heard and saw that.
We did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
And if you were listening, you heard Wes's voice, and you also heard a piece of music by Wes and a piece by Janet, who we'll hear from next. Welcome, Janet Geek.
Thank you.
Saskatchewan composer. So let's continue this talk about process, and for you, how that is, that sort of balance between keeping in mind who this is for and this magical inspiration that comes to you.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much. That was a beautiful performance, Sandra, of After the Rain. I really thought that was lovely. Thanks for sharing it. As far as, sorry?
It's a gorgeous piece. I love it so much.
Thank you. Yeah, that'll be great to get back to Biggar this summer. I certainly will write that on my calendar. As far as process, I tend to, I guess I've changed throughout the years how I go about writing a piece. I think I used to sort of just let the piece flow and it would become whatever it would become. I would maybe think about things like keeping it at a consistent level so that it wouldn't have parts that were in too hard, like a tiny little part that's too hard, or a tiny little section that's like very, very basic and simple. I used to think about that kind of thing, and then just sort of let the piece go wherever it would go. Sometimes I would experiment and choose a certain style or a certain technique to experiment with as I was writing. But lately I've been, I think, more focused on my students, just like Nicholas and Judith. And I've been delving in my teaching world into music learning theory. And there's a lot in there that has to do with repetition of rhythmic phrases, repetition of melodic material and things like that, and just finding ways to incorporate that into my pieces. And so I've been trying to use a lot more of that in my writing. And it's been, I'm kind of like Judith. I like to have a goal in why I'm writing something. And I think lately my goal has been to write a certain piece for each student if I can. And I found that they just take that piece and it's really special to them. They appreciate it and they really do a great job of it usually. So that's kind of where I'm going right now. I take the student's personality and think, oh, this kid really likes, I don't know, jazzy spy kind of music. So I'll try and write something in that style. Or this one is more likes the lullaby kind of music, or, you know, maybe something more pop oriented or something like that. So I'll try and take into consideration their personality and their level and make it something that they would really enjoy playing. And I figure, well, if my students like it, maybe someone else will like it too. So that's where I'm at right now. You were asking what we were doing right now for our composing. Yeah, I write, I'm working on that, writing for my students, but also we have a choir here at the college where I work. And so I've been writing quite a few choir pieces for them lately, which is a lot of fun to hear them, just to come out of rehearsal and hear them singing your piece and enjoying it. And I don't know, singing just makes you happy. So that's what I've been doing lately.
Oh, that sounds, it's interesting that several of you have mentioned the writing for vocal duets by Nancy and the choral music with you and Nicholas and Judith. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for letting me use your beautiful After the Rain for the little bigger invite. I just wanted to say to the gathered people on YouTube, if there's Peggy or Diane amongst you and you want to come on and chat, make sure you go to the Zoom link that I've sent you a couple days ago or yesterday, because that's the only way we'll hear your voice. Okay, let's move to Chris next, and we're going to try to do this screen share situation.
Actually, don't worry, because in fact, I'll go along a similar line to the others. Keep it simple for you.
Okay. Just the switch back and forth, maybe.
Yeah,
Chris,
that's fine.
You kind of got the gist of what the kind of topics have been here. What would you like to, some of the pieces that have become CNCM hits, or pieces that should maybe have more awareness amongst our students, perhaps?
Well, one thing I've realized, I wrote the whole of the microjazz series back in 1981. So we're talking about over 40 years ago, all in one sitting. I mean, I wrote microjazz 1 and 2 across about 2 weeks, the whole of the 2 books. But I didn't write them with anything particular in mind. And in fact, when it came to Connections, which is the other big series I've been associated with, it was the same thing. I just got up every morning and wrote a new piece. And I didn't think about what level it was. I didn't think I'm going to write a hard piece or an easy piece. I just wrote what I felt like on the day, and then got someone else. I had an excellent editor at the time. And he said to me, "You finished grade 3, you're still a bit short on grade 7 or whatever." You know, in other words, I didn't even try to grade the pieces. And I've always found it quite good. I like the idea that you just sit down and you feel like, you know, it's a funny thing to say, but if I feel like writing a particular piece on a particular day, and don't really think about anything further than that, and then try to make the piece as logical and consistent within itself as I can. I like the because I'm one thing which I should tell you all is that I'm really enjoying working with lots of other composers. I'm somewhat of a publisher as well, and for instance, there's a girl in England who's written an entire junior concerto in classical style, and then somebody else who's written a set of very complex, sophisticated impromptus for piano, which are kind of combining jazz and romantic music, if you like. What I like is, I've written so much stuff myself, is saying to people, because I think most people's ideas are good. Whatever your initial idea is, it's a good one. Even students are the same. I always say, you've started with a good idea, work that idea, and don't spend your time doing idea A, idea B, idea C, idea D, but see how far you can stretch idea A for a start. I mean, it's common sense, but I've realized bit by bit, looking at other people's things, that I apply the same principles to myself, of trying to have relentless logic and also spontaneity combined, and I don't therefore really think about who's playing it, because I've written thousands of pieces, so therefore it's in the lap of the gods a bit as to what surfaces on syllabuses and whether people take up particular pieces. And Sandra, you mentioned, for instance, Vortex, which is in Connections 9. That's not a piece I expected students to be playing because I thought it might be slightly too esoteric, but it is unknowable what students will latch onto, and I think I quite like that. And there are some pieces I really like, and I've never heard them played by anybody. You know, everybody's had that as a composer, and other pieces which I mean, I even have had occasions recently where I've heard a piece and thought I quite like that, and realized it's mine. I've forgotten it completely. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I'm just saying. I mean, my history in a way is writing bunches of pieces and just thinking I like the sound of that, and then sorting them out afterwards. And so not I haven't often had to do something where I've tried to restrict myself to a particular grade level. It has happened sometimes, but broadly speaking, I like the idea that you feel like writing an easy piece today, you feel like writing a grade 10 piece the next day, and you just do it that way. So,
wow, fascinating. Lovely that you have the editor to help rein that into terms of grade levels or difficulty.
Yeah, I mean, I'm acting as an editor now, and I'm very good, I got to say, but because I'm so experienced at it. But I've had very good editors myself as well, and I do appreciate their input. Almost to the extent where, like, I wrote 2 new microdose collections recently for Boozy and Hawks. My editors said, not sure about that one, or the equivalent of "you can do better." And I quite like that. I think, well, okay, I probably can, so let's have another go. In other words, I'm acting as my own editor at that point and saying, let's either scrap that piece or work it again. There's always another better version lurking there, I think, of the same piece.
Interesting. Yeah. So are there any specific examples that you could show us, or?
You just mentioned a few that have come up on the CNCM syllabus. Vortex was one. Hot Day is another, which I think is from Connections 8. But the Jingo, I think, has come up as well, which is a hugely popular piece from the Rock Preludes collection, which is still on the Associated Board syllabus in Britain. But I'm inclined to say, just try things out, for students. And CNCM, of course, has this wonderful, am I right? It's a kind of open source syllabus. So you can choose various things. And one thing I might do, can be done later, but I have actually done something recently which might be quite useful for students, which is a booklet detailing every book I've written by grade.
Oh, wow.
In other words, it's starting at preparatory and going up to grade 10 plus. And so I've got picture of the covers, and it's from all sorts of publishers as well. So that I could post up as a giveaway at the end of this session.
Beautiful. I'll get the link from you.
Yeah.
And post it under this.
Yeah, I can send you the booklet as an email, and then you could post it up however you find most useful. But people have found that quite useful, I think, because often they say to me, how does this work in relation to grading in Canada? Because the grading in Canada is different from Europe.
Right.
And I always say, well, Canadian stuff is slightly easier than European, and American stuff slightly easier than Canadian. It's all down to intellectual level. I thought I'd just try that. I'm a New Zealander, by the way, so I can get away with that just.
Get away with talking shit. All right. Thank you so much, Chris. And that's a really great resource that we'll post. How about Martha? Are you there? I'm thinking you are.
Oh.
Hi, Martha Hill Duncan. So yeah, talk to us about perhaps some of your pieces that are used in CNCM.
Well, I when I'm writing all this stuff about processing and thinking about how we do it, I like to write things for students that feel sophisticated, and whether they're a little one or an advanced one, they feel like they have something to say. I like to cover the whole keyboard. I like them to feel like they're sounding like an expert, even if they're just getting their fingers in there for the first time. And the wonderful thing about the Northern Lights series is, as the grades were coming along, Tinley and Deb Wanless would Tinley Dick and Deb Wanless would put out the call for new compositions for level, 1A, 1B, or whatever. And, each time there'd be a deadline and, a grade level. And so I jump in and try to come up with a title and try to come up with some ideas for writing. And in those years, I was in the middle of raising kids and teaching way too many piano students. And so my composing was as fast as I could, and at night when everybody was asleep, or early in the morning when everybody was still asleep. And they were coming up so fast and furious that I talked to a friend of mine and I said, "You've got to help me. I need inspiration to, get into these pieces really quickly and bring them up." And so I said, "You need to give me a bunch of titles." And I was fairly new to Canada. I came in to Kingston in 1988. And I had been in Toronto a few years before that, and then to California, and then back to Kingston. And I said, "I'm so fascinated by cottage country in Ontario. The water, the summer is so special here because the winters are so long." And she grew up in a suburb cottage area in Georgian Bay. And so she started sending me, all these titles: Water Lilies, Sand Castles, Misty Morning, all these things about waking up in a cottage in the summer. And so I'd say that that's my most popular couple of pieces from CNCM is my Water Lilies from level 5. And I think my Sandcastle is also from level 5, one of the level 5 books. And so when I'd write these pieces and I'd think about them for these new calls for compositions, I try to get into that heat, and I loved being into that world. And for me, that really helps me if I can get into the world of the sound and the feel. And for me, it was the heat, right? So a lot of pedal, and I'll just give you a little taste of the Water Lilies. And of course, it's the crossing over of the lilies. And I didn't know at the time I was writing that would become special to a lot of students. And then the Sandcastles, I don't know if I can remember this one, but there is a gliss in there. And when I wrote that gliss, I didn't know that every piece I wrote should have a gliss, should have a gliss in it, because that piece became very popular in the US. They don't have an exam system per se down there, but they do have a National Federation of Music Teachers bulletin. And, I was getting all these orders for this Sandcastles, and I know it was because of that glissando. So I still haven't figured out a way of getting more into some of my works, but I'm going to work on it. So anyway, I'm so grateful to, the whole CNCM group and Deb Wanless for involving all these Canadian composers in Northern Lights. I know a lot of you have pieces in there. And I just want to say before I stop that the one that I thought got kind of neglected and didn't get as much play was one that I feel personally about, and that was in the Northern Lights 6A, and it's called Mariposa. And I grew up in Texas, and I came to Canada as a newly married woman and a new mother. But I grew up in Austin, and I like to write about things I'm familiar with and that I have an emotional connection with. And when I was in university in Austin, trying to figure out if I wanted to be an English major or a composer or a pianist or a singer, I couldn't figure it out. I had lots of angsty moments figuring out where my voice lay. And so this Mariposa that I wrote in the level 6 is about the butterfly, the cocoon, and the coming out of the cocoon and figuring out, from that little cluster and growing into something beautiful and opening my wings. And so there's lots of twists and turns, and there's a little bit of Latin in there because, of course, Mariposa is Spanish for butterfly. And I like it because it has a lot of chromatic lines in it that feel angsty, uncertain. I'll just give you a little taste. It's that insecurity. And I love this part because it's like I'm getting started. And and then I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's a great.
And then I eventually find my way, but it's a lot of hard work and exploration. Anyway, so that one feels so personal to me. And the cool thing that always happens when I'm inspired is that my brain starts working. And because that was a Spanish street name, I eventually took that Spanish street name and involved all the other Spanish street names in my life as growing up in Texas, in San Antonio and Austin. And that came into a suite called Zarzamora Suite, which has other Spanish street names. So appreciative of CNCM, so excited to be a part of it. Looking forward to bigger. I hope I can make my way there.
Yeah, very great.
And thanks for asking about my writing. And I'm writing choral music too. I have a women's choir that I conduct here, and always looking for something to challenge them and get them excited. And so it's great hearing about all you choral writers out there.
I love this relatable story about the self-doubt and then the growth. That should be definitely understood by many, I would think. So thank you for illustrating that. Beautiful. Let's now hear from Diane Hunter, who is also a little bit incognito, calling herself user, but this is in fact Diane Hunter. So Diane, do you want to tell us about one of your CNCM pieces, how it came to be?
How it came to be. I honestly don't know how it came to be.
Oh, interesting.
Other than I was sitting at the piano and I had a goal, and that was to write music. And so the piece that I have chosen is called Stride On, and it's from Northern Lights 8A. And what I like about this song is that it's rewarding and it's challenging. And the reward is that it's very melodic. And actually, I think that's my gifting, is to write melody. And Quincy Jones said that melody is sacred and is to be respected and reverenced. And you know, and I found that to be true, because once you start fiddling around with melody, you can make a mess of it, you know, and you wish you hadn't touched it at all, and you forgot where it went anyway. So so if it comes as a beautiful song, you know, embrace it. So really the essence of my song can be found in the first bar. You know, it's got like the stride, the mpa in the left hand, but it also has some accidentals, and accidentals are not something to be freaked out or scared about, right? It's just altering the song and adding a little color to it, which I love. So actually there's a diminished chord right off. And in the right hand, there's just a little grace note and two other notes. And who would have thought there's anything there? But actually there is a little tune there. If you use the grace note, like from D sharp to E up to G and then over to A. And it's just amazing. The power of song and song sound and the power of music. So
I love the quote about melody being sacred.
Okay, yeah. Sorry.
I love that quote, yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to tell you the challenge. There's more things I could say about the melody. The challenge is to read it properly. In the left hand, in one of the bars, you look at it and think, oh, this is easy. C to C, D to D, D sharp to D sharp. But in fact, it's not, they're not octaves at all. They're tenths. So for, you know, you have to go from C to E. Well, the thing is, I cannot do a tenth easily. I just haven't got the hand for that. So so I have to practice really hard and concentrate and even look down to land on that 10th. That is a challenge for me and for all players to read it correctly. And also in the left hand to shape the hand so that you can play those 4-note chords, you know, and find out where those diminishes are so you can just go there with your eyes closed, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good song. It you know how a good song, it just comes, it's hanging out there in space, right? In fragments. It's out there somewhere. And we are blessed to bring it into time and to respect it. And actually, the very last cadence sounds like I just came out of church. And I just don't know how it got there, but it sure fits. And there is a surprising amount of emotion there. But like I like to play ragtimes and blues and Dixie, and it's just surprising what you find there that you expected to find in classical.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. I love that idea also that you kind of bring the fragments out of the ether, and
yes,
yeah, that's beautiful. Are you working on any compositions right now these days, or is there anything?
No, I'm not, but I am. No, I'm not, but I am.
Okay.
Okay, so what I like to do is add my own harmonies as I hear it in my head to Christmas carols. And if you listen on the radio to Christmas carols, they have all kinds of arrangements. Some of them don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, it's like 1, 4, 5. But there are some of them who are hearing different sounds. And I just love that. For instance, right now, Silent Night, it's been around for a few years, but in B flat, you know, rather than your 1, 4, 5 as usual, well, I think at the end of the second bar, you can go, it's B flat, C minor, G minor, C minor, something like that, you know, better. It's a lot better than F. Or it's a lot better than B flat. And I mean, you can put in all kinds of diminished, you know, just hear it. So that's what I'm challenging myself with, you know, can I hear it? And can I find it? Right. Can I identify it? Beautiful. It's great. And just before I go, I just want to tell Christopher Norton, Christopher, I've studied your music. I was pretty well on my own where I've gone, but
you studied as a child.
No.
No, I've been around a long time.
As a 65-year-old.
Ah.
No, I don't know. I mean, I've got your books. Is it Connection? I forget.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Beautiful.
And it's just an excellent book to see how you arrange it. You make it look so easy when you've got great rhythms there.
Yeah.
And I love it how you take it from the octave up an octave or 2, you know, just move your music. That's not so hard.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Diane.
Anyway, I'll just say one more thing. I think I didn't get in on time because of time change, which didn't even occur to me.
No worries.
I'm so sorry.
No, it all worked out. And then we have one more person to hear from. And that very person, where are you? I don't see, let me see. I think, is Peggy here? Oh, I thought Peggy joined us. No? Anybody see Peggy there? Oh, Diane, do you have something more?
I do. I can't remember if I said this or not. Do you see this up here? It says,
just hold it a bit higher.
Such a beautiful song. And you know who signed it? Judy Snowden.
Aw, they're all
Do you
connected.
remember that, Judy? We were at a summer sizzle, and I must have played one of yours, and you must have played one of mine, and you autographed it. It says such a beautiful song. So if Judy says it's good, it's good.
There you go.
I don't remember that specific event, Diane, but I remember being there and seeing your music.
So
We've known each other for years and years. Me and Diane.
that's so fun making those connections. Well, it looks like Peggy is not here, unfortunately, but oh, there she is. So she's back. She's back. We're going to have just a brief moment to hear from Peggy, who is in Bigger, I think. Are you there? Oh, there she is. Ask to unmute. Peggy, I don't know if you're available visually and by sound, but we're just about out of time. We've done our hour. So maybe we'll do a separate video with you, Peggy, because you can talk about Bigger. Oh, there you are. You are there.
Oh, perfect. I'm here. Oh, I get to talk about Bigger. Is that what you just said?
Well, I thought since we're just out of time pretty much, we can have another video with you where we talk about Bigger. But if you're here now, can you tell us a little bit about your composition?
No.
No.
Yeah, so sure I can. I feel like a very lightweight amongst this group of composers.
No.
And I have a limited experience, but mine has been all pretty much inspired by my students, and it's always I always try to make it, and this is Wes's favorite word, pedagogically sound, so that I have not only beauty and inspiration and things that are appealing, but also things that are going to address some pedagogical issues. So that's kind of where I go. It's my need almost, and then sometimes I just sit down and get inspired and have nobody in mind, but most of the time it's in mind, and I want it always to be playable and accessible, and like Wes said, giving the kids that feeling of that good feeling of I'm doing something really cool here. So I'm working on my cool factor. I'm not quite there yet. I'm into the very lyrical kind of thing and a little bit of modern techniques, but I'm working on those, and I'm very inspired by this visit today.
Group. Okay, amazing. Remind me, the piece you said you had one piece in the Northern Lights book. And
yes, it's Ants on the Sidewalk.
Yes, Ants on the Sidewalk.
Yeah.
So, how did that come into the world?
That came into existence out of sheer frustration. I had a lovely student who's incredibly musical, and he had actually played, I think, I'm just trying to think, is it The Chromatic Rag by Bev Porter? And he just played that like wonderfully well. But I mean, I couldn't get him to play anything else. So we went for C major, and he really liked the triplets, and he liked chromatic scale. So I was like, this is where we're going with that. And if we can turn it into a song about something that is disgusting, which are ants on the sidewalk, he was in like Flynn. So yeah, that's an experience of inspiration and perspiration at the same time.
That's hilarious. Well, I'm going to have to wind it up now, because the idea was that we'd fit it into an hour, and my apologies for the blunder at the beginning that somehow meant we began 10 minutes late. Here we are, just over an hour into it. So I thank you all, each one of you, wonderful composers, such fascinating contributions from everyone. I myself am I do just a very small bit of composing myself, and I'm just in awe of the process and of how it varies so much from person to person. And there's so much to learn from you all. So thank you, every one of you. And thank you again to anyone who's been there on the YouTube watching us live and after the fact. Again, just a reminder to subscribe. It's free. Click on that red button there, and stay tuned for more discussions of this sort and other great content coming your way on CNCM video channel. So thank you so much, everyone. Going to go to shut things down.
Thank you, Sandra.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks and
Bye,
bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Nice
Bye.
seeing you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.